Have you ever been absolutely 100% certain about something, only to find out you were completely wrong? Yeah, it happens to all of us. So today we're going to dive into psychologist Thomas Gilovich's incredible work to figure out the hidden mental glitches that lead us to believe things that just aren't so. You know, Francis Bacon absolutely nailed it like 400 years ago. Our minds aren't perfect cameras, just capturing reality as it is. Nope. They're way more like funhouse mirrors, constantly bending and shaping everything we see. And that's exactly where the most interesting mistakes begin. Okay, so let's get one thing straight right off the bat. This is not about being dumb or gullible. Actually, a lot of our mistaken beliefs come from the very same mental shortcuts that usually make us so smart and efficient. It's kind of like a feature of our brain's operating system, not a bug. It just has some buggy results sometimes. All right, first up, we're going to explore what you could call the cognitive glitches. These automatic, almost invisible errors our minds make when they're trying to find some kind of order in a really random world. And these things affect everyone, leading us astray in some pretty surprising ways. So Gilovich starts by breaking these down into what he calls cold errors. Now, these aren't driven by our hopes or our fears. They're just the unintentional little shortcuts our brains take to make sense of all the chaos out there. Our minds are basically pattern detection machines, and sometimes they see patterns that aren't even there.
Let's take the hot hand in basketball. I mean, we've all seen this, right? A player sinks a few shots in a row, and we are convinced they just can't miss. The announcer's yelling about it, the fans feel it, even the players themselves think they're in the zone. But is it real?
Well, the data says no, not at all. Gilovich and his team dug into the shooting records of the Philadelphia 76ers, and what they found was wild. A player's chance of making their next shot actually went down a tiny bit after making a few in a row. What feels like a genuine hot streak is really just a clustering illusion. It's our brain finding meaning in what is, for all intents and purposes, a random sequence.
Okay, so if streaks are just an illusion, what about slumps? We all know the legend of the Sports Illustrated jinx, right? An athlete has an amazing year, gets on the cover, and then bam, their game just falls apart. Is it a real curse?
It is not a curse. It's a fundamental principle of statistics called regression to the mean. Just think of it like a pendulum. An athlete's performance naturally swings between highs and lows, but it always wants to swing back toward the middle, back toward their personal average. And this is exactly why the jinx feels so incredibly real. An athlete gets on the cover of a magazine at the absolute peak of their career. That's an extreme high point. Well, from that peak, the most likely direction to go is down, back toward their normal average level of play. We call it a jinx, but really it's just statistics doing its thing. Now, on top of those automatic cold errors, Gilovich talks about hot errors. And this is where our motivations and our desires really get involved. We're all pretty much wired to protect our self-image, which leads us to believe we're more talented or more ethical than most other people. You've probably heard of the above-average effect. But it also means we actively seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms what we already believe to be true. And that is the allure of confirmation. Okay, to see this in action, let's try a quick little mental puzzle. Imagine there are 4 cards sitting on a table in front of you. The rule is simple. If a card has a vowel on one side, it has to have an even number on the other. Here are the cards, A, 3, B, and 2. So, which 2 cards do you absolutely have to flip over to see if the rule is true? Go ahead, take a second and think about it. Did you pick A and 2? If you did, you're with the majority, and you've just walked right into the confirmation trap. We instinctively look for evidence that proves the rule. Now, flipping the A is correct. You need to check for an even number. But flipping the 2 doesn't really help. If there's a vowel, great, the rule works. If there's a consonant, well, the rule doesn't apply anyway. It tells you nothing new. The right answer is actually A and 3. So why 3? Because if you flip that 3 and find a vowel on the other side, you have instantly broken the rule. And this is the absolute core of critical thinking. The strongest beliefs aren't the ones we can prove true over and over again. They're the ones that have survived our very best attempts to prove them false. So these individual biases we all carry around with us, well, they get put on steroids the moment we start talking to each other. Information hardly ever comes to us pure and firsthand. It gets passed from one person to the next, and it warps a little bit with every single telling. And this happens through 2 key processes, sharpening and leveling.
To make a story a bit more punchy or entertaining, we sharpen the juicy central details. And at the same time, we level, or just drop, all the boring, complicated context and all the little qualifications. Check out how this works. The original event is nuanced. A student facing difficult circumstances acted poorly. The first person who retells it levels the context. They drop the difficult circumstances part because it's clunky. The story is now sharper. That student acted poorly. By the time it gets to you, that action has been sharpened even more into a final judgment about their character. That student is a bad person. All the nuance is just gone, and what's left is this extreme, distorted impression. And look, this isn't just about harmless office gossip. These cognitive bugs we've been talking about, from seeing patterns in random noise to believing distorted secondhand stories, they have serious, real-world consequences. As the great Stephen Jay Gould warned, just letting flawed thinking slide doesn't just lead to a few personal superstitions. It makes us all vulnerable. When we don't have the tools to think critically about evidence, we become easy targets for people who want to manipulate our hopes and fears for their own gain.
So what on earth is the solution? Well, the good news is we don't need to completely rewire our brains. Phew! We just need to upgrade our mental software. We need a toolkit for thinking straight in a world that's often crooked. All right, so here are 4 key tools to put in that mental toolkit of yours. First, think in all 4 cells. Before you decide 2 things are connected, always ask, what am I not seeing? Especially the examples where they don't happen together. Second, expect regression. Just remember that extreme results are usually followed by more average ones. Third, actively seek to disconfirm your own beliefs. Be a good scientist and try to prove yourself wrong. And finally, be skeptical of secondhand stories. Always, always ask, what context could be missing here? In the end, Gilovich leaves us with this really powerful analogy. Our beliefs aren't just thoughts floating around in our heads. They're like our prized possessions. We collect them, we show them off to people who we think will appreciate them, and man, do we defend them fiercely when they're challenged. And that leaves us with one final question for you. Thinking more clearly isn't just about learning a few new mental tricks. It's about having the courage to open up the garage and inspect the things you already own, the beliefs you hold so dear. So, how willing are you to challenge what's yours?